up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Robert, and today I'm going to tell, I guess, a long-winded story here about how I got into racing and where my racing career progressed over the years. I've had a bunch of people ask me kind of how I got into doing what I was doing and where I am now. So this video kind of will cover that, and hopefully as we go through, I'll be able to put some pictures and videos of these the different race cars that I've had over the years, so you can kind of see what happened. So before I even got into race cars, when I was little, I grew up on a farm, and we always had four-wheelers and dirt bikes and things like that. And my older brother, he raced motocross, and I believe when I was 4 or 5 years old, my dad ended up getting me a dirt bike. So I ended up going and doing like the Pee Wee classes, and ended up, finishing as a Pee Wee champion at the local track for a couple of years before we kind of drifted away from the motocross thing. Uh, Even though we kind of drifted away from the racing, I was still really kind of infatuated with it. I liked all things mechanical. I liked watching racing on TV, going to the races, whatever I could do. That was kind of what I wanted to do as I was getting older. So when I was 15 years old, we came across a 1982 Dodge Omni. It was a car that was built as a raffle up at Winterport Dragway up in Maine. They ended up going and building this car, putting a little 355 in it, and raffling it off one season. So this car was sitting down in New Hampshire somewhere, and it was for sale for a killer deal. So we went down and we ended up picking this thing up for, I think, like $3,000, and this was back in 1996, I guess it was. So I ended up showing up for the racetrack. I'm 15 years old at the time. I just got my license. We were able to get licenses at 15 back then, especially growing up on a farm. You had the farmer's license and everything. So I ended up showing up, and they ended up letting me run, kind of learn the ropes of what to do. And by the time the end of that first day of the races, I ended up coming home with a trophy, a first place trophy for the, they basically split up into a money race and then a trophy race. So I was kind of hooked at that point. So as the year went on, I ended up doing pretty good. I think I finished 7th or 8th place in points in the, what they would call the foot brake class, with no special electronics in the car. So at the end of that season, one of the other racers, they gave me the opportunity to go and run one of their cars. My car at the time, it was running 750s in the 8th mile, nothing real quick. And the other racer that let me drive their car, it was a little bit quicker, like about 680s in the 8th mile. So kind of got hooked on the little bit faster speed. So we ended up finding a different 355 that had come out of an altered, and picking that up, and the plan was to put that in that Dodge Omni and go out there next year and see if we could run some faster times. As we were doing all that work, we ended up coming across a 85 Ford Mustang that was built by a place called NBC Racing up in Winterport, Maine. We ended up taking that 355, putting it in that Mustang, and basically ran the electronics class that year. I believe that setup was running 660s in the 8th mile, I think 1050s, 1060s in the quarter. Again, did well in points, but was just kind of looking to go faster. That winter, with trying to go faster and faster, ended up taking that 355 and basically stroking it to a 383, increased the compression up to, I believe, 14.5 to 1, and put one of those old Hillborn fuel injection systems on and ran it on alcohol. So that ended up speeding up that Mustang from the 650, 660 car that it was, down to running 16s. I think the best pass with it was maybe a 609 in the 8th mile, and was running 960s in the quarter that year. So, just kind of kept going faster and faster and putting a little bit more money into the car each year. At the end of that season, figured we'd gone as far as we wanted to go with the Mustang. Ended up selling that chassis and having that NBC Racing up in Maine build us a 125-inch wheelbase, 48 Fiat altered. Stuck that 383 in there. Did quite a bit of racing towards the beginning of the year. First testing, then ended up racing for points with it. That car ended up going, I think, 550s in the eighth mile, if I remember right, 880s in the quarter. It's hard to remember back all those years ago. And it ended up being a really consistent car. I actually ended up being first place in points in the electronics class up there at Winterport Dragway for most of the season. Ended up going to college that fall and missing out on basically the whole tail end of the season, and actually remained in first place in points all the way up until the last race of the year, where I finally had a couple people pass me and ended up, I think, fourth that year. So the next year, obviously with college being what it was, I didn't get to race as much as I'd like to, but I still had that 48 Fiat, ran maybe 4 or 5 races that year, and then ended up selling that and picking up I think it was a 225-inch wheelbase rear engine dragster with a big block. Ran 770s in the quarter. Again, didn't race a whole lot, maybe 5, 6 races that year. Just, college was the priority, and didn't have as much time to race as I would have liked. I don't remember if I ran that for a year or two, but ended up selling that at one point and picking up an old Top Sportsman SVO Mustang. You'll see in the pictures here, 540 cubic inch big block Chevy in it. I think that ran low eights, if I remember right, in the quarter mile. By this time, we were running more quarter mile stuff than we were running eighth mile. So I ended up having that car all the way up until I ended up getting out of college and getting my first real job out in the industry. So racing really kind of took a back burner there. So I ended up actually getting out of racing for a couple years, at least drag racing, going back and doing the dirt bike thing, did a bunch of motocross racing, ended up racing snowcross for a number of years up there in New England with myself and my brother. So it was a little bit different time. And then after a couple years, I finally decided, I missed the drag racing thing. So I basically sold all the stuff I had. I had a couple interesting street cars at the time. I had a Porsche 930 that did a little bit of track day stuff with. Just a few little odds and ends like that were pretty neat. So I ended up selling all that stuff, and I ended up buying it was a Mustang, 93 Mustang, GT essentially, that had a 408 cubic inch all aluminum small block in it. It was a Pro Charged engine, had Gates C3 heads on it. I mean, it was a pretty good beast of a car. We ran ET streets on it, so it was all street legal, working headlights, taillights, turn signals, the whole deal. And that car was a 7-second car in the quarter mile. Did that for about a year, ended up wanting to go faster again. Sold that and picked up what you'll see here is a 62 Nova blown alcohol car. Didn't have a whole lot of luck with that car. It was quick, but after a few passes on that blown alcohol motor, we ended up having some oiling issues and kicking a couple of rods out the side of it, and spent the rest of the season trying to get that thing put back together. Once we did get it put back together, did go out there, run a few more times. I think it was low 7s, high 6s in the quarter, if I remember right. And ended up buying a Advanced DT certified 94 Corvette. At the time, it had a 496 cubic inch big block, 1471 blower on it, another 6-second car in the quarter mile. Ended up running blown alcohol for about a year, and then swapping over to a nitrous engine, where I ended up running Top Sportsman racing up at New England Dragway with it. So I ended up running that season there. Not a whole bunch of races, maybe 3 or 4 throughout the year, but that was a good car. Ended up costing me a lot more money than what I thought it was going to run Top Sportsman. As you start to get into those categories, it's just obscenely expensive. So I had a friend at the time who was into racing jet cars, and told me that was kind of the way to go, was where you can actually go fast and not have to spend a bunch of money, and maybe even make a little bit of money on the side. So basically sold everything the team had, and picked up a jet funny car that was unfinished out of Oregon. Ended up bringing that here, finishing the car. First time I went to go start it, ended up burning up a hot section in the thing. It was an expensive lesson learned on how to operate jet engines. Ended up learning how to rebuild the things myself, and actually ended up helping me out as my career went on, because I could go and rebuild those jet engines on my own. And I actually ended up doing some engines for some other people. And at one point I had, maybe even 4 or 5 jet engines sitting here in this garage, just getting rebuilt here by myself. So I ran that funny car for about a year and a half, ended up getting my jet license with it, and ended up selling that. I wasn't even planning on selling it, but I got some random call one day from an individual down in Mexico who was looking for something updated from what he was running before, and basically gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I ended up taking that money and buying the old Ernie Bogue's old Beast from the East J60 car. Ended up changing the name over to Blazing Angel. You'll probably see some other videos on my YouTube channel, and I'll put some clips in here on this. But basically went from Jet Funny Car to Jet Dragster, and I ended up running that Jet Dragster for, 7 or 8 years. Raced all over the United States from one end to the other. Just a ton of different racetracks. Been as fast as a 5.09 quarter mile ET. That was down at Virginia Motorsports Park, and my best mile an hour was 308 miles an hour, and that was up in Atco, New Jersey. So traveled around, got to do a lot of things. I was a participant at the Jet Dragster Nationals up in Norwalk, Ohio, pretty much every year, and got to be one of the premier cars out there in the jet racing world. So I ended up doing that up until COVID hit here a couple years ago, and COVID really kind of killed the racing industry. People stopped kind of showing up to the races. The stands weren't packed like they were. It was harder to get events. So I decided, with that and wanting to spend some more time with my family, I ended up selling the racing team, and at the time picked up a Porsche 911 Turbo. As I had said back in the video, I did have a 930 for a while. I always kind of liked the Porsches, and figured it'd be something I could go and do with my my wife and my daughter, and just kind of go and cruise around and do some car shows and whatnot. Ended up having that car for about a year, and then picked up this Gallardo that you can see here in the back, and that's kind of what we've been doing recently, is going around doing that. I have had a few projects over the years, kind of like this Defender. I've also done a 31 Ford Model A that was set up for road racing. Put in some clips of that. That was a really fun car. Actually, probably the only car that I regret selling. I actually ran that Chattanooga Motor Car Festival, did some time trials with it. It was a fun ride. So as of right now, I've just been kind of tinkering with this stuff. Said the Land Rover, it's my latest project. Once that's done, not sure where we'll go with that. Been doing some, just preventative maintenance on the Lamborghini, as you can see some of the videos we did there. And as you stay tuned with the channel, different projects are going to be coming through, be going to different events. And I think you guys will like what you see. But that's kind of a short history on how I ended up getting where I am today. My racing career, and how I kind of ended up not racing anymore and having the cars that I do now. So that being said, thanks for watching. Again, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.